Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So the big news this week is all of the reveals for the upcoming TCG set Maze of the Master, which came out yesterday. It actually brings with it a bunch of new cards for a ton of different themes. I know that at first we just thought it was only about 7th Tachyon, but there's some cool new cards as well as some pretty notable reprints in there as well. The set is going to be dropping in just over a week, so in time for the 3v3 YCS in Las Vegas, you guys will definitely want to be aware of what cards are trending leading up to the event. Let's get started. Kicking things off, let's talk about 7th Ascension. So I know we talked about this last week, but there's a couple of things we want to make note about it. The main thing is that it was confirmed to not be included in Maze of the Master, which I think is something that was holding people back from picking up their copies of this card early. Of course, once Maze does drop, this card is going to see a ton more usage. It searches for 7th Tachyon, which is functionally a replacement for Bonfire. Bonfire can only search for the Pyro Ryziel monsters, but depending on what you run in your extra deck, 7th Tachyon can search for any of the Ryziels or even Artifact Lancia. Of course, it's still possible that some people will just stick to Bonfire since it doesn't play into Droll and Lockbird as hard, but I guess we will have to wait until after YCS Las Vegas to see just how the format shapes up. Now last week, this card was stuck at around $35. Now, however, the card has shot up roughly $10 as we see it currently priced between $45 and $50 per copy. This card has just the one printing as an ultra rare in Duels from the Deep, a side set that absolutely no one opens. So this is actually a card that's very difficult to find. Barely anyone just has this card lying around in their trade binder. Hopefully this card does get reprinted soon. If it doesn't get reprinted and Bonfire gets hit on the next ban list, we could definitely see this card shoot up in price even more because we're assuming that Ryziel is still going to be meta relevant. At the same time, any sort of reprint to this card would tank its price immediately. On to the next one, let's talk about the reprint that everyone's been freaking out about, Mulcharmy Perulia. So this one was definitely one that caught everyone off guard. It reminds me of Thrust in last year's Maze set, or Forbidden Droplet being in Duels from the Deep. Sometimes Konami just randomly reprints a money card a little bit early, not just to help drive product sales, but also to make the card a little bit more accessible to the player base. The good news is that the reprint is an ultra instead of a secret rare, and you're generally going to be pulling 4 of them per box instead of 2, so it should be reasonably easy to get your hands on them if you don't have them already. And of course, Perulia is a competitive staple, seeing a ton of play in the side deck and sometimes even spilling into the main deck. With this one, we are talking about a price drop as everyone seems to have listed their copies right away. This card was around $40 to $45 just a few days ago, but right now it seems that the card has already fallen down to $30 each. We have to keep in mind that it's not like this reprint is coming in Rarity Collection or a Structure deck. It's still something that is in a relatively high rarity that you're going to have to pull. And I think people are generally looking at Maze of the Master as an underwhelming side set as well, given that outside of 7th Tachyon, it doesn't introduce too many meta-relevant cards. That said, I don't think we're going to see Perulias flooding the market anytime soon, so I wouldn't exactly be eager to dump my Perulias right away. I think $25 to $30 is actually a pretty reasonable price for the card to stay at until it gets reprinted, which would theoretically be later this year in the Megatins. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. The next card is sort of related to Maze as well. It's Photon Delta Wing. Now this card actually came out in last year's set, Maze of Millennia, and I think it's actually a pretty forgettable one. Basically, this card just on summon, summons another copy of itself from your hand or deck, but then locks you into light monsters for the rest of the turn. Now the idea is that you don't really need your normal summon in the Galaxy/Photon deck, since you play so many high level monsters, so you run this card so that you can make Galaxy Photon Dragon and then go into your combos. Of course, This year's Maze set is introducing some really cool new Galaxy cards, and the new support is making people want to pick up the existing support in order to complete the strategy. Photon Delta Wing has shot up in price because of its limited availability. We've seen the regular Ultras go from $5 or so a month ago to now being over the $10 mark each, and then the collector's rares were really cheap at $10 or so. They're now up to $25 each. I don't really see Photons as a meta-relevant deck, but I do know that if you don't know what you're doing against them, they can definitely OTK you out of nowhere, so it's definitely a deck to watch out for at the local or regional level, especially with the new cards. Keep an eye on this one and probably look to offload it if you aren't playing with them, since any upcoming reprint will destroy this card's value. Moving on to some other things, I want to briefly take a look at Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. Now, just as a side note, the original art of Ghost Reaper, that's my favorite card art in the entire game. I don't know why, I love it so much. I have the original Judge mat with that artwork. Anyways, this card is one of the older Ghost Girl hand traps. If your opponent controls more monsters than you, you can, as a quick effect, discard this card and reveal a monster in your extra deck, and you banish all of your opponent's copies of that monster that you revealed. So back in the day, this card was used in the ABC mirror match to get rid of ABC Dragon Buster. Over the years, it's one of those things that has been talked about a lot, especially for like the decks that really depend on one particular extra deck monster, but it never really pans out. Well, in the current format, it turns out that people are using and seeing competitive success with Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries in the side deck, as getting rid of Detonator makes it a lot harder for Ryzeal to function. This is especially true with so many people switching over from the Fiendsmith variant to the pure Ryzeal build now. Now, this card got a reprint in Quarter Century Bonanza, so that alternate art is available in every single rarity, and the original artwork has a bunch of printings as well. Therefore, it's just the high rarity printings that are up a bit, though admittedly it's nothing too crazy. We have the ultimate rares that were at $6 before, they're up to $10 to $15, and then we also have the Quarter Century printing, which was around $5 or $6, they're now up to $10 each. I don't know just how well this card is going to stick around in the format. It could definitely fall out of the game if Ryzeal drops out of the format eventually, but it's going to depend heavily on how the next couple of formats look to see whether or not this card sticks around. The next card I want to touch on is Elzette of the White Forest. So this card is one of the White Forest monsters, which were extremely hyped at one point, but haven't been too crazy over the last while. Elzette is one of the best cards from the theme, as it searches for any White Forest monster when you special summon it, but it can also add itself from the graveyard back to your hand as well. So recently, White Forest cards are something that people are experimenting a bit more with. On one hand, players are messing around with White Forest as a Mina, and that's something that looks like it has a lot of potential. However, I've also seen some people experimenting with Blue Eyes White Forest, which has synergy because the White Forest cards are low-level light spellcasters, so some of the Blue Eyes cards that you would be using with Sage or Maiden can actually interact with Elzette and Esteller as well. Anyways, Elzette is a relatively new card, coming out a couple of sets ago in the Infinite Forbidden. Honestly, its price has been all over the place since it's released, as it gets hyped and then hype dies down out of nowhere, so this card's been at highs of around like $50 and then lows of $20 to $25. Just recently, this card was at around $26 per copy, but in the last few weeks has shot back up to between $30 and $35. This card should theoretically be reprinted in the 2025 Megatins, so if you have copies of this card that you don't need, it might not be a bad idea to offload it while it is seeing some hype. Here's an interesting one. We have Dark Spirit's Mastery. So this card is a bit of an older normal spell. You can activate this and discard a card, then search for either Destiny board or a level 8 Fiend monster from your deck or graveyard. So this card came out back in Legendary Duelist Immortal Destiny. It's meant to be used alongside the Destiny board and Dark Necrofear cards. However, apparently this card is getting some attention because of the Regenesis archetype. The Regenesis monsters are high-level ones that all have 2500 attack and defense points. They can be special summoned out when you control a monster with 2500 attack or defense, so as you can imagine, they're a pretty splashable engine. It just so happens that one of the monsters for the theme is a level 8 Fiend, which is therefore searchable with Dark Spirit's Mastery, and that monster is actually a Stratos for the deck. So you could theoretically run a couple copies of this card, and then a couple of different Regenesis monsters as a pretty free rank 8 engine. Now, the cards are still relatively new in the OCG, and I haven't seen too many people experimenting with this card specifically over there, but I have seen the Regenesis cards being used, and we all know that players in the TCG here, they really like searching and consistency, so maybe this is something that we could see play when the cards are eventually brought over here. Now with this, it does have a couple of common printings, both of which are really cheap, which is good if you just want copies of the card to use. If you want to bling your deck out, this card has just one holo printing from Immortal Destiny, which is the set where Malicious Bane and a Dusted Gold got really short printed from. This card was only a few dollars before, but now you're looking at having to pay $10 per ultra rare copy. Definitely something to be aware of if you happened to have cracked open some Immortal Destiny in the past, since this was an easy ultra to overlook and throw into your bulk. And finally, the last card I want to talk about for today is Light and Darkness Dragonlord. So this card is something that looks really cool. It's a retrain of Light and Darkness Dragon, which is a really scary boss monster if you play certain Time Wizard formats. This card is just a modernized version. It requires a level 8 Light Dragon and a level 8 Dark Dragon in order to make it, and you do actually have to properly fuse it. You can't contact fuse. However, this card can provide 3 Omni Negates by giving up 1,000 attack and defense points per negate, and if it's destroyed by your opponent, you can special summon a dragon from your graveyard as well. So at first, I thought someone was trying this card out in Blue Eyes. I haven't really seen it in any list there, so I was a bit confused. It turns out this card is actually something that players are using in Master Duel, since this card is one of the stronger monsters that you can end your board with in Branded. It's actually pretty interesting since I don't think that the card ever saw any usage here in the TCG, even when Branded was at full power, and it probably won't anytime soon, especially now with Branded Fusion being limited to 1 here. However, it is interesting to see how the card being used in Master Duel has apparently caused some demand for it here in the TCG, despite the two being completely unrelated. Right now, the QCR is around $40 to $45, which is pretty steady, but the Ultras have been climbing over the last couple of months. They were only a couple of dollars before, but they are now up to like $6 to $7 a piece. Guys, if there is something that I'm missing, like if this is actually being used in some other TCG deck, then do let me know down in the comments. But until that other information does pop up, I'm gonna have to recommend that we sell this card while it is being falsely hyped. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. We should be doing some ban list prediction stuff. I know that the ban list is probably going to come up soon, so Tom and I are going to try to do something related to that. Also, just so you know, we will be going to YCS Las Vegas. I think Tom is going to be competing. I am going to be going to do the written coverage for the event again, so if you guys do see me, feel free to say hi. I'd be happy to meet some of you guys. It'd be really cool. YCS Las Vegas was a super hype event last year, and I'm definitely hoping that we do get that like live ban list reveal at the end of the event. That would be absolutely amazing. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.